Here's how to get free Xbox games on your Steam Deck. How's it going, everyone, and welcome to Deck Ready, the channel all about the Steam Deck. This is my weekly, semi-weekly news update video where I go around the internet. I try to find the biggest Steam Deck news stories. I deliver them straight to your eyeballs and ear holes. So the first news story I have for you guys today is that you can finally fully turn your Steam Deck into a portable original Xbox. We've actually been able to stream Xbox games from the cloud to the Steam Deck, and out of all the devices my friend Ray, who runs Xbox Ready, and I have tried it on, the Steam Deck is ironically the best device for Xbox cloud streaming because it streams the games in at 540p to the Edge browser, and even though you have to do some weird stuff to get the controller to work, it's the best experience overall because 540p on the 800p screen of the Steam Deck doesn't look that bad, and playing Forza Horizon 5 running at Xbox Series X settings on the Steam Deck at 540p looks a lot better than running that game natively on the Steam Deck at low settings at 800p. But now, thanks to a video from Modern Vintage Gamer, you can see how to set up xemu, the original Xbox emulator, on your Steam Deck, and I was honestly shocked at how well a lot of the games he tried out ran. He tried some awesome games like Jet Set Radio Future and Halo Combat Evolved, and both ran extremely well on the Steam Deck, hovering at 60 frames per second, maybe dropping down to 58 a few times, but overall, the experience was really good. Now, with other games like Conker's Bad Fur Day, the emulation isn't quite there yet, but it is so good compared to what we had just a few years ago, and the fact that it runs so well on the Steam Deck and its 800p screen, that is awesome. Now, with something like Halo Combat Evolved, you can just download the Master Chief Collection off of Steam and play that game natively on the Steam Deck already, but that's one of the harder games to run on the original Xbox because even though it's an early title, close to launch, it's still a pretty advanced title for that system. Another place where I think this is going to come in handy is with games that aren't available for backwards compatibility on the Xbox Series X. There are a huge selection of Xbox 360 games, of course every Xbox One game and every Xbox Series X game, but when you get back into the Xbox original generation, there are less games available there than what you would have on the 360 side. So knowing that I could go back and emulate some games like this Crash Bandicoot game I used to play on my Xbox, or NHL Hits, which was this very violent, it was like NFL Blitz, but hockey, and you could throw people through the glass and stuff. Those are games that I would really like to play that I haven't played in a really long time, and being able to emulate them on a handheld on the go, that would also help with the fact that these games run at lower resolutions natively and also at lower texture settings than we're used to in 2022. I messed around with a ton of these different handhelds that you can emulate games on, like the Aya Neo Next, the One X Player Mini. I've also messed around with the Anbernic RG350. All of them have some major positives, but all of them also have some major drawbacks as well. The Steam Deck is the first one of these devices that just works pretty much out of the box. No matter what game you throw at it, the only one I've really had trouble with out of everything I've tried, which is a ton of games ranging from Tony Hawk all the way up to stuff like older Wolfenstein games, is ironically the Metroid Prime trilogy on Wii. I can play Metroid Prime, normally the GameCube version, through Prime hacks, and it works totally fine. I just get weird stuttering and shader compilation issues with the Wii trilogy. The amount of systems you can emulate here, from 3DS to Nintendo DS to Game Boy Advance to Super Nintendo to PS1 to PSP to PS2, Metal Gear Solid 3 works on this thing, and it's awesome. It's just absolutely crazy to have one device that can do all of this, and especially when you use EmuDeck to install these, it's just literally downloading a file, double clicking it, and then it installs every app you need to emulate these games. Also sets up the controller and graphics configurations. It literally goes from being a kind of painful process to drag and drop, which is sweet. The issue is when you're talking about newer consoles that it can emulate, like the Nintendo Switch, you get people basically pirating games before they're even out. So Xenoblade Chronicles 3, at the time I'm recording this video, the reviews dropped today, it's getting 8s and 9s, 4 out of 5s, 5 out of 5s, completely across the board. People are super excited for it. Review copies have been out in the wild for something like 3 weeks now, but this is a game that leaked early on eBay. So I know a few people, my buddy Mr. Matty Plays included, who are able to pick it up on eBay for $128 just so they could get some review coverage in because they weren't fortunate enough or lucky enough to get a code from Nintendo. The issue is some other people were able to get it on eBay, and they were able to dump it to their PC and run it on their Steam Deck before it was even available on Nintendo Switch. And even though this is a game that really pushes the Nintendo Switch to its limits, it's running pretty well on the Steam Deck. So if you're one of those people who has a Switch but has evolved and moved on from that device and enjoys playing games on your Steam Deck, what I would say to do is go out and pick up a copy of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, go home and dump it to your PC key and then transfer that to your Steam Deck. Because while you can technically find pirated versions of these games online, like every Switch game you can think of, a lot of the sites you use to get them are just virus-ridden hellholes, and it just feels a little bit more legal, I guess you could say, if you go out and buy the game and dump it yourself. Because even though you're buying a cartridge, you're still buying a license, you're still buying a physical game that you can hold in your hands. And for the most part, that's your copy of the game, whether Nintendo wants it to legally be or not. Personally, I haven't dug too deep into Nintendo Switch emulation. I have a lot of these games on Nintendo Switch, and having the Switch OLED, it's like good enough to play some of these games. The only ones I've really wanted to go back and play in recent memory are stuff like Pokemon Arceus or Pokemon Brilliant Diamond. Other than that, there hasn't been really anything grasping me on the Switch, because before I would play the same indie games I can get on the Steam Deck, like Infernax or Dead Cells. And now I'm playing through those games again on the Steam Deck. Resident Evil 6 is another one, and all of them, Resident Evil 6 included, run and look so much better on the Steam Deck than they do on the Nintendo Switch. But for games that are only available on the Nintendo Switch, I'm glad I have that device around as well. So the third news story I have for you guys today is about not overheating your Steam Deck. So we all know right now in the entire pretty much United States and kind of the entire world, things are getting really hot outside. I film out here, basically out in the desert in California, and we have to come in at like 10 in the morning and shoot all of our videos as fast as possible because it gets over 100 degrees by the time you start hitting noon or 1 o'clock. And I'm used to that, but over in the UK, they've been having heat waves where it's been going up to like 90, 100 degrees. And the difference is between videos here, I can run the AC for like 10 or 15 minutes, and the same thing goes for my apartment. But over in the UK, the vast majority of people who live there don't have AC, and their houses are actually insulated to keep them warm in the winter. So when it gets up to above 90 degrees, it's a lot harder for them to deal with it over there than it is for us over here. So when stuff like this happens, people tend to stay home from work or school and just play video games. But Valve is issuing a warning for people who have the Steam Deck. Valve basically tweeted out a warning for people who are going through a heat wave right now, saying that this thing was built to be used between 0 and 35 degrees Celsius. What is that in Fahrenheit? And 35 degrees Celsius is around 95 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around what it's been getting in other parts of the world right now, where people have Steam Decks and are playing their games. Nintendo actually issued a very similar statement saying that the Nintendo Switch is built to run in the same temperature range. And the issue here is that if the Steam Deck gets to 100 degrees Celsius when it's running, like Valve clarified this, it'll start to throttle itself, because if it gets to 105 Celsius, it really starts throttling itself to keep itself below 100 degrees Celsius. And I guess if you're playing it in 95 degree heat or 35 Celsius degree heat, that can get it closer and closer to that 100 degree threshold, and that's when things start slowing down and not running properly. So if you've been sitting home and not really doing anything, and you don't have air conditioner and it's getting really hot in your house, make sure you're not playing the Steam Deck in a really hot environment, because that'll make it start to throttle, and it could even damage the internal parts. So if it's super hot in your house, I would say figure out a cooler place to play, or maybe keep the Steam Deck in a nice, cool, dark area until things start to cool down and game on another device. Same thing goes for the Nintendo Switch as well. Going back to Halo for a minute though, while Microsoft has done a really good job of making sure that the vast majority of their games that are available on Steam run well on the Steam Deck, one glaring omission since this thing came out has been Halo Infinite. It's another classic anti-cheat issue that we're going through with games like Destiny 2 and Dead by Daylight. Now, Dead by Daylight, they said they were going to update the anti-cheat in that game to make it work on Steam Deck as soon as possible, and really it's turned out to be a drag and drop situation with so many other games. Like the way you could get Outriders working, for example, before they officially patched in the right easy anti-cheat, is you could download Apex Legends, go to that game's anti-cheat folder, and then drag and drop the files from there into the folder for Outriders, and that would work just fine. So the fact that the developers of games like Halo Infinite and Dead by Daylight have been sitting there twiddling their thumbs trying to say like, oh, it's so much harder than everyone thinks, that's turning out to seem not so true. But I'm sure Microsoft noticed how easy it was to get the anti-cheat working on the Master Chief Collection, and then turned around and officially they have it working on Halo Infinite. Now, unfortunately, they've decided that they're not going to support this live service like they should, and there's not really too many people playing the online anymore. But if you want to run through the Halo Infinite campaign and check off some of the collectibles or like Mjolnir armor containers around the map, maybe even do some of the boss fights, you now have that option. Because while there is single player stuff in the game, you need to be connected to the internet at first launch to be able to actually get into that. So now that this file is in place, you can do the single player in Halo Infinite. Yeah, 2022, it's not great so far, guys. we gotta have anti-cheat files on our Steam Deck to be able to play a single player portion of Halo Infinite. I think one day Bungie's gonna wake up and listen, mainly because of the new Sony acquisition that just happened, and that brings us to the last news story of the day, which is surrounding the saga of Returnal. So if you guys watch my other channel, PS Ready, you know that Sony's been porting a ton of its games over to PC. They've done Horizon Zero Dawn, Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection is coming soon, we also have Spider-Man coming out on August 12th, and out of the 3 games they've released so far, they all look and run really well on the Steam Deck, which is great. So a lot of people are super excited about Spider-Man, but one that's sort of fallen through the cracks despite looking like it's pretty much done is Returnal. If you guys don't know, Returnal came out pretty soon after the PS5, and it's really one of the only true next-gen exclusives on that device. It uses the haptic feedback of the controller super well, it utilizes the SSD to have instant respawns after death. It's one of the only games I've played on my PS5 that really feels truly next-gen, and because it's a roguelite made by Housemarque, I've always wanted to play it on a handheld ever since I picked it up for the first time. So when Sony started porting all these games over to PC, I was sitting there like, man, I really hope they port Returnal. And ironically, around the same time that I started thinking about this, a game showed up in the Steam database called Oregon, and people realized quickly that a lot of the stuff in the description of the game was directly related to Returnal. And since people sort of unearthed this, they've been paying attention to the Steam database listing, and Sony's been working on the back end with Housemarque to update this game, and just recently they updated the listing to say that this game is going to support Steam Deck. It's going to be deck verified, and apparently it might even have some optimizations for the device, which is cool because it kind of makes sense. Returnal utilizes SSD features. The Steam Deck runs most of its games off of an SSD, so it'd be awesome to see this game come to Steam Deck, and then if you have it on your internal SSD, you're able to take advantage of some of the cooler features like that instant respawn stuff you get on the PS5. I don't know if they could figure that out with the SD card, but Linus famously said in his review that the SD card is running about as fast as the internal SSD, so maybe we could get that feature there as well. And for those of you out there who don't necessarily believe this is happening just yet, Alex from Digital Foundry posted on Resetera that he's literally seen the game running on PC. We've also had leaked screenshots from the game on PC, so I feel like we're gonna get Returnal on Steam sooner rather than later. Now, as for when, I'm not entirely sure. We know we're getting Spider-Man August 12th, and that's good because it shows Sony's not sticking to the order they announced these games in. Because if you remember, Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection was announced to be the next game coming to PC, and that one is still missing in action. And we've also heard from someone at Naughty Dog that the gap between The Last of Us Part 1 coming out on PS5 and PC is going to be a lot shorter than all of us think, and that it's going to come to PC very soon after the PS5. So in my mind, the perfect time to release Returnal is between August 12th and whenever the PC version of The Last of Us Part 1 comes out, because if it's optimized for Steam Deck, that's going to be a great game to play around October because it's a horror game at its heart. It's like a horror third-person shooter. I absolutely love it. So if you were thinking about picking it up or downloading it through the PlayStation Plus collection, maybe wait till it's available on Steam, because even though it might come out at full price at launch, Sony's been putting a lot of their games on Steam for $50, and then you can get them on Green Man Gaming for like $35 before they even launch.